very much an honor to be here and an honor to be asked to come and speak to all of you. So thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. So today's topic is about trying to understand social media and mental health in adolescents. First of all, we wanted to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for coming out of your homes on this beautiful day and coming here to be with me. So I'm very happy that whoever is here because I'm taking the assumption that the people that needed to hear the message are here. So, and for all those of you that are on Zoom, I want to thank you as well. Adolescent mental health problems are definitely on the rise. So social media use contributes to teens' risk for mental health issues. Social media is pervasive in teens' lives, and this has become a primary way for teens to interact with peers. So in other words, social media is here to stay with this next generation. And we have to learn to navigate it and to be able to live with it. And let's see, it seems like we have quite a few young people here, so welcome to you as well. And they are experts in this. I am not an expert in this because I am an immigrant to this digital world. But because when I was growing up, there certainly was no digital media. But now the whole world is computerized and there's all sorts of technology in every direction we can possibly turn. And so it's really important that we keep safe and we know how to navigate it. We teach our children to keep themselves safe. So hopefully I'm not going to be too boring to the adolescents here, and that you can pick up on some of the things I'm saying. And hopefully you'll be able to understand how to keep yourself safe. So according to the Surgeon General, adolescent mental health problems are increasing. And this includes suicide rates, violence in schools, and they can test for this, schools, social pressures, and teen depression. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Mayo Clinic
Studies show that teens with greater emotional investment in social media
at higher levels of anxiety and depression. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's on the computer. I think
Let me see if
we should mute it, maybe.
Yeah. I'm just trying to navigate technology. Let's see. Maybe our friends will come back. So the Mayo Clinic's study showed that this is a way to lead to higher anxiety and depression for our youth. And actually, it's probably for adults too. It can lead to loneliness, it can lead to self-harm, and it can lead to a lot of feelings of inadequacy. So you don't feel like you're measuring up. And that's because you're constantly comparing yourselves to the people that you're seeing online in the social media platforms. So it's very important to understand. The next generation, they're digital natives, where I'm the digital immigrant. And your parents are probably mostly all digital immigrants, except for the IT people who know how to navigate it all. There's much more opportunity to encounter problems, and 97% of US adolescents actually use social media platforms, 97%. So that's a huge amount. Half, unfortunately, are online continuously. And by that, I mean, so half of 97% of our adolescents are constantly checking their phones, constantly checking their computers, constantly checking Snapchat and Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So, because they want to know what's going on. And there's negative online behavior that they have to deal with on a constant basis. There's name calling, cyberbullying, false rumors spread, and unsolicited explicit images can come upon them as they're looking at these social media platforms. So we have to be really careful. Some of the other things that can happen is this can lead to stalking, people stalking them online or on social media, physical threats. It exposes teens to prejudicial attitudes, judgmental comments, and they can feel like they're possibly wasting their time. They don't in the moment, but then afterwards they feel very bad about themselves for having been online for so long, so many hours out of the day. It can lower concentration. It can invite cyberbullying. And it also can bring unfeasible expectations to our youth because they expect that they should have 1 million followers on TikTok, or they think they should be doing these great things that all these other people are doing that they see on TikTok. Some of it might not even be real, but that's what they start to face. They feel inadequate. They can become socially isolated because of social media. They can get a lack of sleep because they can't put their phones down. So they're sneaking the phones under the blankets at night. They can actually get addicted, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And they can find that because they're all the time on social media platforms, they're having diminished one-on-one activities or group activities outside. So starting around age 10, children's brains undergo a shift that spurs them to seek social rewards, including attention and approval from their peers. So if all of a sudden your 10-year-old is looking for approval from their peers, it's because their brain has actually shifted and it's developing in a way to want that social attention and approval from their peers. So that's very normal, and you should be able to understand that as parents, that this is a normal thing that's happening to our children at that age. And at the same time, 10 years old seems to be the age that we're giving our children smartphones. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody change their parenting style. I'm going to give you what I've uncovered in research, and then it's going to be up to you to decide what's right for your family, because I can't tell you what's right for your family. I'm just going to give you the facts of what's going on, and then you have a discussion with your family afterwards. But for some people at 10 years old, they're getting a smartphone. And this comes at a crucial time for brain development. And the pandemic provided a big time of isolation to complicate matters. So kids were very isolated during that time. What's happening? Somebody have a question? Oh, no, okay. Okay, that's okay, no problem. If you have a question, that's fine, speak up. So what happened during the pandemic is we were very isolated from each other. And so because of that, the social media platforms became the way that 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, or adolescents communicated with each other. But unfortunately, this has linked to mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and body images. And the reason why we have body image issues is because we see these, what we consider perfect bodies on the internet and in social media platforms, and then we strive to try and get that when it's not even often real. So you have to be very careful with that as well. So what happens are happy hormones, as we're calling them, are oxytocin and dopamine. They multiply in the brain around ages 10 through 12. And these hormones are very sensitive to attention and admiration. So social rewards responds and hormones are released. So as soon as someone says, oh, I really like your comment, happy hormones come into your brain and they say to you, oh, fantastic. I think I'm going to try and get another comment. And I'm going to get another like, and I'm going to get another like. And pretty soon, before you know it, that's all you're living for, is to get these likes. And then afterwards, you don't feel satisfied. but you have to keep trying to get these hormones released in your brain. And at 10, 11, and 12, you have no idea what's happening. As a matter of fact, adults often don't know what's happening when they're getting those kind of hormones released in their brain. But that's actually what leads to addiction. And so it's a very, very fragile time. Social media can continually give brains a boost of hormones, and young people can continually seek these boosts, as I said, by likes and comments, and especially when people give like really great responses to your comments and encourage you to keep writing on social media platforms. But it is possible that social media platforms are actually changing our brain development for a whole generation of youth. And that was why the Surgeon General said, raised that concern. Because what ends up happening is we're developing what we call neural pathways to encourage us to do social media platforms, to get likes, opposed to living our lives in a more balanced way. So I'm not suggesting we don't do these things, but we need balance. And especially when our brains are developing at this young age, we want to make sure they're developing in a normal way and not addicted to social media platforms. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good. So social media platforms are catalysts for teen dysfunction sometimes because our peer opinions matter. We want instant likes and peer opinions. We have a fear of missing out. So we're going to we're scared something's going on, Instagram that we didn't know about, what's happening at school that we didn't know about. We're frightened we're going to miss out on something. So we're constantly checking the social media platforms. And this compulsive checking of social media platforms can actually lead to dysfunctional behavior. And we are constantly seeking our social validation. So we're letting ourselves be validated by a social media platform, people hiding behind Instagram, TikTok, all these social media platforms. We're letting them validate us instead of us validating ourselves, or allowing the people who we love, like our parents, our family, our close friends, our cousins. Those are the people that should be validating us, and then we can also learn to validate ourselves. But instead, as teenagers, we're going on these social media platforms, and we're just using people, strangers, complete strangers, to validate us, and we have no idea what their values are. So very, very important that you understand the difference. So here I'm going to give you some ideas. We want to start slowly. Okay, we don't just want to give a 10-year-old a phone and say, hey, there, go ahead, do whatever you need to do with your social media platforms. Here, take it. No, it's too much too soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach defense from negative people and messaging. We're going to do this very slowly. Consider allowing them, when they first get their phone, to text a best friend or relative at first. Don't first go full blown. Secondly, teach defense from negative people and messages. So if they see negative messages or they have that, don't let them, try not to, if you are getting negative messages from social media platform, I'm begging you not to absorb it. All right, I'm going to teach you how to not absorb it. You want to make it be like water off a duck's back. So I teach my patients this all the time. I say, why does a duck float on water? A duck floats on water because they have a film of oil on their feathers that doesn't allow it to absorb the water. Because otherwise they're on water all the time. If they absorbed it, what would they do? They would sink. So I teach my patients all the time, and my family members and my own children, when you hear a negative comment, you can think about whether or not you think it's valid or not. And even if you think it's valid, you can try and take the good points from that comment, if there are any. And if they're not, I want you to be a duck and let the water go off your back like water off a duck's back, because it beads up and it falls off. And that if it didn't fall off, the duck would drown, right? The duck would absorb it and then it would drown. So we're going to be ducks. And when we hear negative comments, we're going to let them let those negative comments beat up and wash off our back like water off a duck's back. Now, if they're positive comments, you can absorb those. But the problem is you don't want to rely on other people's comments to make you float. That needs to come from within. So also encourage your children to enjoy other activities. They may be able to do sports. This activity in itself, right here at the mosque, is really wonderful. This is community. This shows that you're actually leaving social media. Hopefully you're not checking your phones while I'm talking. You're leaving social media behind and coming here to be together. That's what we want. We want activities. It can be a picnic. You're having dinner later on, right? All of those are community events. We want to encourage those kind of activities. And we want to encourage them with our youth friends and relatives. There's the very important aspect of belonging, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but belonging is right here. You're all belonging together, and this is a community. It is really important that we have safe spaces for adolescents and children to feel like they belong. Because once they feel like they don't belong, they may go to social media to find an avenue to belong. And we want to make sure that we're providing enough really positive, safe places for our children to relate to and to belong. Parental controls may help, well, they should help, if you're putting some kind of controls on the social media platforms that your children are there for. But parental controls can also lead to opposition because our children do not like to be controlled. They don't like parental controls on the whole. So sometimes you're just going to have to set firm rules, whatever is right for you, and firm boundaries, and then, but it needs to be a discussion. So your child feels like they're part of it. There's lots of toxic influences on social media platforms, and we have to find ways to limit them. So those parent controls can help. All right, there's the good news. There's some positive influences that are happening on social media platforms, and we need to really zoom in on those. It's actually a venue to express solidarity. So that's very helpful. It helps our youth stay connected with friends, the friendships we want them to have. It helps them find community and support for specific activities. So maybe they are passionate about ecology, but nobody else is passionate in their friend group about ecology. There are ways to find people who are also passionate about ecology on social media platforms, and it can make them feel not so alone. It can they can help build things with other teenagers, things that they're very excited about and that interest them. It actually can teach better communication. It just has to be done safely. They can share their artwork or music, and they can actually become a better individual, expressing themselves and exploring how they feel, what makes them tick, who they are as a person. It also can motivate each other and set different kinds of goals that they never thought were possible. Mutual support and shared identity, very important. And we still have to, though, avoid the risks. And that happens with education for both the parents and the teens. So here's the part of the lure. So in my doctorate, I met Dr. Ann Haley. She was one of my professors, and she, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, came up with this 6 things, core longings, she called them, that we're always striving to attain. The first one is belonging, which I already spoke about. Oh, thank you. Yep, good. That's good. See, we're doing it together. It's very important. Belonging, which I already spoke about, we all need to feel like we belong to someone. Also, understanding. We often don't feel understood. We feel like, especially in those teen years, do you remember, all the parents, do you remember those teen years when you felt like no one understood you? And that's true for all teens. That's a normal part of development. Security, having a sense of security and feeling safe, feeling like you know who's, where you're going to sleep that night. How you're going to be fed. All those issues of security. Significance, feeling significant. That's what happens when we get all those likes on our TikTok, right? It's feeling a sense of significance, like the internet is saying you are significant, you are important. Purpose, a sense of purpose, and love. We're always looking for love. So these core longings are what our parents are often trying to give us in our home, in our environment. But oftentimes as youth, and you feel like no one understands you. But these core longings will be there if they're set at home. But we're always searching for these core longings our whole lives. And so the problem is that even if the needs are met at home or at school, adolescents now have an additional alternative. They can get their core longings met, or they think they can, online on social media platforms. And they unfortunately always don't have the discernment because their brains have not been fully developed yet to know what is a positive means of getting your core longings filled and what is a negative means of getting your core longings filled. So it's up to us as adults to make sure that we teach our children the difference between positive and negative, because they're not going to always know. So here's some recommendations based on evidence. Social media is actually not inherently beneficial or harmful to young people. It can be, could be both benefit and it could both be harmful. But it's by what it is, it's not inherently bad or good. The effects on an individual are based on that individual, the circumstances that individual's in, their strengths, their vulnerabilities, their own environment, and their access to social media. So all those things contribute. So you might have two children in the same family. One would be perfectly fine being involved in social media platform because they're able to discern the difference between negative and positive. And they're not letting the internet influence their entire personality. But you might have another child who's not as doesn't have the same kind of discernment, maybe have self-esteem issues, maybe struggling in school, maybe struggling at home, struggling internally. Two people, same household, same upbringing, same environment, but one could do social media platform, the other one needs guidance. We want to make sure that we're properly shaping individual social media experience for each individual. And we want to make sure that this understanding, it does not apply to all youth, it applies to the individual youth, how much you have to supervise it. Adolescent development varies and the potential risks are greater the earlier they start doing this. And one thing you need to be very careful of is you need to be aware of the races hidden and encoded in social media platforms. Sometimes we don't even realize that the people are targeting us in whatever minority group we're in. But we have to understand that that's taking place at all times, and we have to help our children to understand it as well. And being very conscious of not scaring them, but making them educated. Studies do have limitations, and cause and effect data is hard to collect right now. That's because longitudinal study is unavailable because social media platform has not been around for the last 15, 20 years, which a longitudinal study would look for. So there's few studies that happen with marginalized groups of youth as well. And so the risks, what they do know is that the risks may be related to how much time you're actually on social media. This is very important. In a 2019 study that said 12 to 15-year-olds who spend more than 3 hours a day in the United States are at a heightened risk for mental health problems. Now you're thinking, oh, 3 hours a day, that's really long. That is not really long anymore. Some of our children, unfortunately, are on 17, 18 hours a day. They have it in their beds, underneath the covers. They are looking at it at school. It's like a constant a need for them to go to this, which is what we came back from with the addiction. In 2019, England study reported that they used more than 3 times the daily use for 12 to 16-year-olds predicted poor mental health and well-being. I say several typos on there, so I'm very sorry about that. Studies show links between depression and anxiety with high use. Okay. So, as we said before, this is just reviewing. Cons can be the exposure to harmful or inappropriate content, exposure to dangerous people, cyberbullying, losing touch with reality, feeling like social media platforms are the real deal. Oversharing personal information. We have to make sure that our children understand they cannot share their personal information. They can't give that kind of data. And because they can collect that kind of data and it can come back to haunt you. Identity theft or being hacked. And that all of this is interfering with sleep, exercise, homework, or family activities. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir here because you're here as a family. So you know the importance of having these family activities. The opportunities for social media are social support, online companionship, healthy socialization, helps with social isolation. So it both hurts with social isolation and helps with it. Up to date on the latest news and information. Boy, the people that are on TikTok, the kids that are on TikTok know all about, and they have to be careful about this because some of it's not true, but they know the newest news coming out before they can tell you what's going on in the world before the news comes out with it. It can also help with stress. And it can help with adversity and stressful conditions or environments. It also can teach them to grow self-respect and self-esteem. So it also has the ability to connect somebody here with somebody in England, somebody in France, somebody in India. So it's global. Our children now can be exposed to a global world. It's a whole new world of knowledge. And parents, you need to keep an open mind and establish a dialogue with your youth to let them know that you're here for them and you're going to help them navigate this. But it has to be under, in my opinion, under your rules and what your expectations are. So what can we do? Well, developing minds, it is easy to follow the opinions and acts of others. So we want to make sure that we're not allowing that to happen. It's important to always have parents' hands on the social media platform compass and speak about positive and healthy outcomes for your children. Set reasonable time limits. How much are you willing to allow your child to be on social media platforms? That includes actually being on like Google or YouTube. Monitor your teens' accounts and balance with offline activities. Remember, it's all about balance, in my opinion, and make sure you add fun stuff. So if you're inviting them to an activity, you might not want to invite them to an activity they don't like. Like, let's say they hate gardening. You're not going to want to say, oh, good, today we're going to go to gardening club. That's not going to work. You want to make it exciting for them. Now, some children love gardening. Some teens love gardening. And so that would be exciting for them. But you have to know your child, know your teen, what would excite them, and make sure you're doing the fun stuff. Give youth a chance to explore topics they might not want to explore with their parents. So this actually, you can talk to them about things that you might not normally talk to them about because you want to express to them the dangers that are there in front of them. It gives a chance the youth to discover critical thinking. And that is such an important skill to have your whole life long. We want that critical thinking. We want that for our children. We want them to be able to discern what is right and what is wrong, and actually how they're going to deal with something that's a problem for them. That problem solving, that critical thinking, that can all come through these discussions and navigating social media platforms. So that's a big plus. Tailor the functions to the social and cognitive abilities of the individual, which we talked about before, and understanding the rules and why we have them. So our rules are there to protect us, right? We all know that because when we get our speeding ticket on the freeway, right? Everybody, I don't know if everybody's got one. I've actually not had one, but my husband has. He's over there. And they're there that's for the police to tell us to slow down. They want us to slow down. I'm probably too slow. I'll probably get the ticket for being too slow. But they're there to tell us to slow down because they want us to be safe. The same thing. We can't just throw a bunch of rules at our kids and expect them to follow them if they don't understand why they're there. We have to explain to them why the rules are there. Behaviors online can lead to permanent use or shared with others, including commercial purposes. So once it goes online, it's always there forever. So once your child posts something or we post something ourselves, it is there forever. And they need to be aware that that can come back to haunt them. In early adolescence, 10 to 14, I strongly advise, and the research suggests that adult monitoring happens. Explain what is not okay. Like, it is not okay to share explicit pictures of yourself online. That is not okay. And that is a boundary you need to set for your child and make them clear why. It's really important because these things, it's so amazing. Well, I mean, I guess it was always true. It just was, I guess, less ready when we were growing up, that something that a decision you made when you were 13 or 14 could haunt you when you're 65. And it's really important to understand that their choices are there to protect them. This monitoring is there to protect them. Friending or following your child's social media accounts with an agreement about whether you will or won't post really can help. So if you say, I'm going to follow your post, I'm going to follow you on social media platform, but I will not post on your posts or respond to them, gives them a little bit of freedom, but it lets them know that you're monitoring it. And then, of course, you're going to have a discussion with them if all of a sudden they're posting things you don't like or you don't agree with or are outside of the rules that you set up. Autonomy can be increased with age and earned responsibility. So the older they get, the more responsibility they can get, provided they've proved that they can handle it. You need to help your child understand the rules and come up with a plan together. This can, in my opinion, that's going to be and from what research says, that's going to provide the best results. Doing it together. Self-control is actually not attained from a brain development until mid-20s. And actually, self-control is something that you're going to struggle with probably your whole lives. In high school and college, they will have autonomy, so you have to prepare your children to understand how they can help themselves. So you want to give them a little bit of autonomy in these high school years, because when they get to college, they're going to be totally on their own. And so you want them to have the tools to be able to navigate it so that they can stay safe. Boundaries. How are we doing with time? Okay. All right. I'll quickly run through. I'm almost done. Boundaries. Developmentally appropriate time setting, limit setting, and parenting monitoring is critical in early adolescence. Our own use influences our adolescence use. So our children are going to model what we're doing. So I don't know how many of you are on social media, but if you're on making a ton of posts, then they're going to do the same thing. No screens at the dinner table. Research says it's really bad. We need to have family dinners. No social media until homework is completed. And these are just suggested rules. You have to decide for your own family whether these are the right rules. Understand and use privacy settings. Don't share data or personal information. Explore apps that limits internet access according to age. There's some applications apparently that you can get that will just allow, it will do it for you. It will limit internet access depending on the development of the child and the age of the child. Make sure, if I can encourage anything, that the location-enabled services are turned off so people on social media platforms cannot discover the location of your child or adolescent. That is really important because that's how stalking happens. That's how children can get into really bad situations with strangers. Early research says that social media limits and boundaries with adult-child discussion and coaching leads to the best outcomes. So in other words, if you're communicating with your child, you're doing this together, you're going to have the best outcomes, and so are they. They're going to be able to navigate this because they know they can trust you and rely on you. You become their security blanket, and that's really important. So here's some mental health issues. Adolescent risks to exposure to maladaptive behavior should be minimized, reported, and removed. We don't want our adolescents to be exposed to dangerous people, so just remove them. The risk of social media platforms may increase psychological symptoms because there could be cyber hate, online discrimination, prejudice, hate, or cyberbullying, and it can be directed at racial, ethnic, gender, sexual, religious, and ability status. So we need to understand that people out there are not always nice. Exposure to discrimination and hate is a prediction for increase in anxiety and depression. So when kids are hated online, they get very anxious, as adults do too, by the way. It's not just isolated for adolescents and children. This is all of us. Nobody likes to be hated upon. So it's going to add to anxiety and depression. We need to make sure we understand that. Online bullying and harassment can be more severe and damage psychological development. And research indicates that the elevated risk for both victim and perpetrators of cyber hate are really going to affect our children. Adolescents should be able to recognize the online structural racism and critique racist messages. So sometimes there's underlying messages there that normally we wouldn't understand as being racist or hateful, but they're there and they're trying to manipulate our users. And we want to educate our children so they can recognize it. So they can say, wow, this was a microaggression. This was something that was targeting me because of my race or because of my beliefs. And then if you have that ability to be that kind of discernment, then they say that you have the power and ability. Research says that you have much better outcomes for being able to not absorb that racist statement or that negativity. All right, so we're at the point where we can say what to do. Well, retune screens for problematic social media use. That includes gaming. Because you can also, gaming can also be a social media platform because the person you're gaming with can speak to you, and that could be a complete and utter stranger. So this is not just TikTok and Instagram, it's also about gaming. Now, all the 10-year-olds, all the, I guess it's girls and boys now, when I was growing up, it was mostly my sons, are going to hate that statement because they love their gaming, but you can become addicted to that as well. So you have to protect yourselves. Have the discussion. You can go and game with them if you're the parent and they're having trouble understanding. Set the limits. Look out for impaired ability to engage in regular rules and routines. If your child always wants to go down to the basement to play games or go on social media platforms and they don't want to do anything else, and it's actually interfering with the fun stuff that they should be wanting to do, that's a big red flag. Making too much availability for social media platforms is a really important red flag too. If they're too much use, they're staying on too long, longer than intended, these are all red flags. Lying or deceptive behavior to use social media, this is a discussion that needs to happen. Loss of disruption of friendships, relationships, or educational opportunities. You want to encourage face-to-face contact. They need to know how to navigate that. Face-to-face contact is really important. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of this already, but they need at least 8 hours of sleep. They need to maintain their sleep-wake schedules. No screen time before an hour before bed. Apparently that's terrible for their sleep. Inefficient sleep is associated with disruptions for the neurological development of their brains and their emotional function, and it actually leads to greater suicide attempts. Social media should not interfere with a person's social interactions, and they still need to do that physical activity, so exercise. That provides lower rates of depression. Limit the use for social media, become social media literates, skills that use balanced, safe, and meaningful social media use, question the accuracy, understand the tactics and the misinformation. These are all the things that we can use and utilize to nourish healthy relationships on or offline. And teach how to solve conflicts, safe communication for adults. Together you can manage this. Stay calm and communicate, stay educated and communicate, set the rules and boundaries together and communicate, encourage fun activities and time with friends, and communicate. Remember to ask for help if you need it, both our adolescents and our children and our adults. If you need help navigating this, ask your community of people that you trust. And we're looking for progress, not perfection. You're going to make mistakes along the way. So don't be frightened of that. Okay, there's my references as well. And thank you for having me. Do we have any questions?